One. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our 11th Symposium of Architecture 3000, 4000, 5000, and Education of the Future. And I'm so happy now because you have three, I will say, worldwide experts, not only architecture, but parametric architecture. We have with architect Claudio Lucchesi, Italy, and we know each other from the workshop in Italy, and with architect Jonas Lundberg from Sweden, and architect Andrew Yo from Hong Kong, but from London right now. So welcome so much. Thank you for your time. And maybe Claudio, do you want to give us a little introduction? And thank you for your time. I do appreciate.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to you. Now, this year, so we celebrate 25 years from when we started our network architecture office between London and Messina in Sicily. So I studied in London at the AA with Jonas and Andrew. Nowadays, they both teach at the AA. And Jonas teaches as well at Chalmers University in Gothenburg, and Andrew teach even in the Westminster in London. So when you said you were interested in parametric architecture, so I thought about them. So we did some research, some study. So we can start. I can pass the word. I'm very pleasure to pass the word to Andrew and then to Jonas to say something about this.
Well, thank you for all the contact, dear Claudio. Who would like to start? Andrew, would you like to present yourself?
Well, yes, it's honored to be invited. It's kind of interesting opportunity to talk a little bit about what we do. Perhaps I'm not 100% sure it's about what we do or about the subject of parametricism as such. But yes, I kind of have the opportunity to study at the AA. And at the time was sort of like supervised by Jeff Kipnis and Patrick and Brett Steele at the time.
Wow.
And yes, and since then we kind of sucked into the world of doing architectural design in a kind of pretty prescriptive way, if you like, and been here in London for since 1995. So it has been a long time. And it's a privilege to work with so many kind of talents in London, and obviously including Jonas somehow. He come down to London, and we've been sort of like talking about some of those subjects. Maybe not whether we would call it parametric design today or simply just computational design. Those are kind of conversations that we have in the last, say, 15, 20 years, if you like. Perhaps I would say a little bit sort of like in a way that the way I see it.
Dear Andrew, I want to remind you, we are not only architects in the symposium, we are as well teachers and parents and people who wants to rebuild the world, education and schools.
Definitely.
I mean, please, could you tell us basic, we don't even know what is exactly the definition of parametric architecture. Do you want to help us with that?
In terms of definition, that's interesting. Well, I think that's easier to understand as a, say, computational design in that sense. To say we are looking at design through computation tools, working with one would say driven by design parameters. And perhaps some of this is also relates to recently working with artificial intelligence, and maybe it's also have a little bit more focus towards about, say, production, particular construction production, using with robotics, relates to, say, performative, sort of like a driven design approach. When I say performative, perhaps something has to do with some kind of data-driven design approach with from visualization to sort of like a design process. I think those are kind of some of those, say, underlining principles for such a design work. And then perhaps from that kind of point of view, it also going into lately into, one would say, two other directions. One is looking into behavioral science to see how do we start to, from mapping out our behavior, meaning human behavior, how do we work and how do we live, and start to inform our, say, built environment. And the others is become more obvious, coming from more computational aesthetics to another new kind of aesthetics in the last, say, 3-4 years. You know, that is not only driven by production, in terms of the new kind of production that we have from say, the emerging industry of robotics and laboratories that, or even maker movements. All those are the new trends of production aesthetics. But at the same time, I think right now we are also approached to the point that we might able to, one would say, reversively inform how production should be reconsidered. And that is kind of forming a new kind of, say, culture of let's say, of beauty, and how the new generation would be. I think the excitement is very much about exactly on the education side, that this sort of like a whole thing in the last, say, 15 or 18 year of development become much more, say, popular. When I say popular, it means more accessible, more easy for the new generation to learn. And the resource is, you know, kind of really everywhere. Everybody can tap into that conversation, from YouTube, TikTok, forum, you know, a lot of things that is available to the younger generation. And this kind of almost like changing the way how education works, particularly in architecture, that we are no longer so like relies on, say, a top-down mechanism of teaching. In fact, the students have a lot of work is actually self-learned, and that kind of changed the whole conversation. You know, you mentioned Patrick, and so as Claudio mentioned Patrick. I think he have two massive volume of books. It's called the Autopoiesis. And that book fundamentally lay out the conversation about from single authorship to multiple authorship design work, or maybe even education work, and eventually towards, I would say, no authorship required, because it just keep evolving through different input, if you like. So that is kind of the ultimate goal. I think in terms of the design is not driven by a top-down process. I think that's kind of pretty much the one would say the theoretical framework as an approach.
Beautiful. So for building schools and university, we have the perfect pattern, don't we?
I think for that, and we're going back to the conversation, that there's a few things that we can look into, right? The pattern is one thing, but the pattern is also learning from, one would argue, education behaviors. How does education operation works, from organization to interaction? Those are behavioral learning that we normally can map it out. Yeah. And some of this, of course, we still might, you know, occasionally deploy known geometry in order to work with, one would say, presume engagement, if you like. So I think that is a kind of some of those things that set out what some of these things, the current practice and the future sort of the generation would approach.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrew. Sure. And maybe we would like to know your thought about Jonas as well, please.
Sure.
And if you want to introduce yourself first, of course, welcome.
Yes, so my name is Jonas Lundberg. I'm an architect. I'm part of Urban Future Organization. I'm also a teacher. So I've been teaching architecture now for the past 20 years in London and also here in Sweden. And as such, I think it's very important for students to work in an experimental way. So we work with experiments as a way of conducting pedagogy. So students work on wicked problems. They look at experimenting, testing, and so on. And parametric design is something that we've been working on now for maybe around 20 years as a way of trying to define what the underlying parameters are for design. So for us, it is a tool. It is a tool to be used. And today, we as architects tend to draw less by hand or to sketch or draw by hand, but we compute. And in order for a computer or a digital medium, not just to become an electronic pen or pencil, we need to find other ways of dealing with digital information. So as architects, we tend to work with representation of the world. We don't necessarily build, but we make instructions for other people. And there are some amazing examples of this. One of my inspirations is Alexander von Humboldt. He was fantastic because he's one of the last scientists. He was a scientist of everything. And he was trying to record in maps, in observations, the world around him. And in doing that, he experimented on new forms of representation, new ways of drawing the world, looking at the world, and understanding all the parametric relationships that underpin our world. So I think his projects are really, to me, a great inspiration. And I ended up in the wrong place here. I apologize. Try again. No, not the right slide. I'm sure that's the one. And as such, I think we are very interested in this idea that in order for us to help improve the world and help us work with children and with students to become better architects, we need to be able to improve the way we do our work. And in doing that, we want to experiment on, can you see the screen now or not?
No.
Okay, let me see again. Apologies.
Sometimes you have to get out of the screen and go back again. Yes, yes, now it's working. Thank
now
you.
You see my
Yes.
share, right? That's not the right one. Apologies. Let me try it again.
So much for computation, isn't it?
Yeah. And I do this every day, you know, when I'm teaching, and still there are problems. Now, so as architects, we tend to build what we can draw, and we build or we draw what we can build.
I love this one.
And of course, this is quite difficult if you want to evolve the way we live in our universe and the way we build. We need to improve the way we design and the way we represent. At the same time as we move the boundaries forward for how we build and how we conceive of things. So in our education, we work a lot with these two questions about how we can develop ideas, actually in both these areas. And in architecture, it was like this. It was based on drawing training, where we were looking to connect our hand to the way how we were observing the world. But today, our business have changed. This is some of the early experiments of digital design, where basically the computer became a digital pen. So you're trying to translate this ability to observe, to look at things, to something which is digital. And all suddenly we have a screen, we have a mouse, we have something else that connects us to our medium. And the computer is good at other things. So I think we have to find ways that we can work with the digital medium in as a free way as we would when we are drawing things by hand. I had a professor my first year in architecture about 30 years ago from Argentina. And he basically said, if you learn how to draw a rock, you can draw anything. His idea being is, even if you want to make simple architecture, you need to understand and free yourself from the restrictions of what you can draw and what you can conceive before you can decide actually what you want to do. So we have been working with something which is the equivalent of, let's say, first, like digital freehand drawing, where we can use digital medium to sketch, to work freely, to help the students develop a free relationship to the media, so they're not limited by the type of tools that they pick, just as you would do in art training if you were working with analog media. And as such, we also build connections to what we can build. So since the digital model suddenly is made up by a series of parameters, numbers, and relationships, we can also relate this to the way it machines things, how we fabricate things, how we build things. And that's kind of what we've been working on. This is an example from Unit 4 at Lagdom Everest, where we were working on this and ultimately building buildings, going from a digital sketch to a parametric model to fabrication outcome in the realization of a solar-powered building made entirely of foam or lightweight material. So this is done with a university in London that we competed in a competition with. And the idea here is that you go from a sketch to assembly drawing to maybe things that you make in a factory. This is not from the same project, but here we can go from a digital model directly to something that we can make in a factory. This is something called engineered timber or cross-laminated timber construction, where you work with big engineered elements that you can cut directly from your material. And with our students, we go and we work in workshops and in factories. We work in multidisciplinary constellations, so they can consult and work with experts to realize projects of varying complexity, but with other professionals. And I think this type of collaborative models is a much truer reflection of the type of complexity in our business today. And we think in academia, when we teach, that we have to prepare the kids, the students, to work in this type of multidisciplinary collaborative constellations and not just look to their own designs. And again, of course, this is a connection between the way that you conceive of something, the way you design something, and the way that you fabricate something. And the way that you can understand this translation as a series of parameters or relationships. And this is a student of ours at the Architectural Association School of Architecture that Andrew and I taught a couple of years ago, Dalia Matsura Frontini. And this is our kind of work we do on pedagogy that allows you to go from the artisanal way of working with analog medium to a way of digitizing and working with fabrication. So in her case, she was working with new digital media called 3D painting. And she had a little 3D printing pen that she could connect to this. And in this very haptic process, she could also control and work on the workflow to, in this case, a robot arm that could also extrude material. And then all of this work is done in first person in virtual reality. So she is actually inside her paintings or in her creations. That makes it experiential, and she connects her body to it. It's very similar to the light paintings down in the 1940s. There was many experiments done on that by light painting. And then we try to understand the new media, in this case, VR, and the way that they can be translated into drawings and representation. Then in its own turn is a form of experimentation. So it's a lot of playfulness, and this is Dalia at her final review at the Architectural Association School of Architecture, when she can see the kind of outcome of her year. She was working in Tibet, and she was looking at this type of tree root systems that you find, that she was working to explore using this medium. Digital of virtual reality, 3D painting with an actual physical outcome. So we think this type of playful experimental work, it's really important in helping students fulfill their own ambitions, to free themselves of limitations, take responsibility for their own projects, and to allow them to work in a speculative, creative way on the kind of worldly problem that we face, that allow them to attack and look at situations and context in different ways. So we think this is incredibly important in developing the agency of the students moving into the professional life. Okay, I think maybe I can stop there.
Beautiful.
Do you have any questions, or how do you want to go on? I can show more things if you want, but maybe it's also long for your audience, so maybe it's more interesting to have a conversation.
Time is flying, actually. Do you want to? Oh, that's so beautiful.
Another
just a couple of slides just to enjoy the beauty.
Yeah, so this is a student of ours at the Architecture Association. Fang, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Fang, I'm a bit slow. Also working with models. Now I lost the name again. Elizabeth, working in wax and then finding ways of representing this. So some physical experiments on making models in wax and trying to find ways of representing this in drawings. Right?
Wow.
So this is her final thesis presentation at the Architectural Association. And then some of the drawings and the models and the work of the students at the end of the year.
Beautiful.
You can enjoy in a workshop like this, Noemi.
Beautiful. Maybe we should do a special, do another interview. This is so beautiful. Would you like to stop with the screen, the sharing?
Yes, I can. So
and we can, maybe we can close up. Time is really flying. We can close up with each of you with maybe a little message for all the viewers, if they are architects or not, some recommendation or something you want to say in general to us. And we will close the interview with that. Do you want to start, maybe, Jonas?
In general, about parametric.
Whatever,
I can
whatever
be,
you want. It's just some recommendation for us.
I can sum it up in both ways. I think in pedagogy, it's really important to work in an experimental way and an experiential way. So you make tests, you work on projects, you pose yourself, design problem where you can work on different ways of evolving your approach to something that you find interesting. And I think this type of pedagogy is incredibly important. Me, myself, my sister is a Waldorf teacher, so I have lots of connection with Steiner in the family, but also in the Swedish school we have adopted Emilio Reggia, I think it's called. It's also a pedagogy that deals a lot with creativity and the way that you experiment and you test things in the classroom. I think that's important. And also when you go further, I think what we try to approach it like it's that I think technology is here to stay, and it's important for us to embrace also new forms of media, social media, VR, AR, parametric design, fabrication, the fifth, or let's say the fourth industrial revolution. So when our machines are talking back to us as opportunities, and we need to find ways of working as creatively with this new technology as we would when we were working with crayons and paper or clay or any other type of children's game that we experienced when we were kids. Now we have to translate that same attitude towards the new media that we have. And in order to make good professionals that can evolve both representation and the way we build our societies and buildings, we need to find ways of doing that. So we can actually evolve the physical environment towards a better future.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What about Andrew? What do you like to tell us or recommend to?
Well, I guess perhaps for me, just like the advice I would like to give students or even myself, never fear to try.
Never fear to try.
Because we can only learn by trying. And trying it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. Try it again.
Perfect.
Then,
beautiful.
You know, for us, it's like we can only really learn from exploration. The more we explore, the more we actually can get something out of it. If you just like fear failure or fear, one would say the lack of success, it's very difficult because I think every time we do something, there's a very small incremental intelligence we are gaining. And that small incremental intelligence is kind of important. We have done a workshop in Australia about 2 years ago. Students are working in groups with Hololens, Microsoft Hololens, is to actually to work between the physical and the digital as a complete sort of like a multiple reality environment to make sort of like installations and models. And you know, for half of the workshop, we actually couldn't do anything. And in fact, that we can actually learn a lot just by hitting the first, you know, little bit. And then at the end, you know, after the workshop, we have an installation about 3 of them flying inside the workshop, you know.
Wow.
It was kind of like beautiful to just try.
Try.
Yeah. Now that's what I would like to encourage people to do all the time, including myself. I'm learning too every day.
So never fear the try. Thank you. What about Claudio? Do you want to close up with your own recommendation? And we will need your microphone.
As Jonas' sister, I'm lucky that Maria Rosa, my wife, she teaches through the Steiner education in a way. So I can see, I've seen many times. I had I've been lucky enough to follow this kind of experience with the students, and I can see how they improve and grows much better in terms of creativity, in terms of fantasy, compared to students that go in like normal school. So I think the architecture should follow in a way this kind of and help this kind of process in terms of creativity and fantasy. And in this sense, parametric is like sometimes it's a very useful tools because you can test multiple possibilities in a very short time. So if this can help even in that sense, I think it works perfectly. So.
Yeah, beautiful.
Maybe I could, if I may, I can add something at the end. I think what Andrew said, this of not being feared, of not having fear to making mistakes. I think this becomes kind of interesting in today's world when the kids, and I think we have now a new millennial generation who grew up with so many games and so much social media, that there is a general sense of being afraid of making mistakes, because in games and so on, you always learn to find a way out in a very simple way. So with gamification and so on, the reward is always close. So what we have to work with today quite a lot is to get the students to take risks and to have the will and the courage to make mistakes, because it seems like they don't want to invest time on things that they don't know the value of yet. And for us as teachers and educators, I think that's one of the biggest challenges out there, is to be able to learn by doing and learn by also making mistakes. And I think there's a culture today which is kind of adverse to that. And I think it's not good for learning.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Claudio, Jonas, and you for your input, pictures, and the good strength and good vibe you are giving us. Not only for the symposium, but for the life of everybody. Because you know what I realized? You are helping the humanity to get out of a box, physically and mentally and with the heart. So it's such an incredible job. It's like take the humanity to the next level with the creativity, with the human part, with all possibilities being possible. Thank you so much. And definitely we will be in touch and do some more.
Wish you all the best to your symposium.
Yes.
Thank you, Claudio, for the contact as well. And see you soon.
Okay.
Take care. Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much.
Bye-bye.